This is the Construction Leading Edge podcast from constructionleadingedge.com. My name is Todd DeWalt. It's my job to help you, the construction business owner, eliminate chaos, maximize profits. We've got a great conversation for you with a friend of mine and a client, Monish Khadye from Brisbane, Australia. And here's what you're going to get out of this interview. You're going to hear from Monish about the business case for happiness, why he calls his ideal clients dinner date clients, and why you want some of them. He shares a rule for emails that doesn't allow him to be a jerk, how he took a different approach to project management and how he would operate for a year in London and the surprising results that he got out of it, why he's happy to ask foolish questions, and he talks about when your goals aren't really your goals. He also talks about the keys to working with your spouse in a true partnership, the only way you're guaranteed not to fail, how he's embracing technology to make subcontractors more profitable and compress schedules. He talks about his upside-down approach to business goal setting, how he's using automation to deliver a higher volume of projects with the same team, and how he's cracked the code on performance reviews and peer reviews. A lot of great stuff in this one. You're going to get a lot out of this one. Probably want to take some notes. Got a couple of resources I want to get in front of you before we get to that interview. Here they are. Let me ask you a question. Are you tired of second guessing yourself on the big decisions you need to make as a business owner? Ever wish you could have somebody else to talk to who has experience owning a construction business and they're not a competitor, just to bounce ideas off? Do any of these four statements sound familiar? Number one, I want to be constantly learning and improving, and if somebody else has figured out a better way, I'd like to know it. Number two, I'd like to be part of something bigger than just myself, to be part of a group that's making a difference in the construction industry. Or number three, I've been figuring things out on my own for a long time. Am I doing it right? Is there a better way? Or number four, I don't know what I don't know, and I would sure like to avoid the expensive learning curve. And if you've dealt with some of these things, maybe you've tried a few solutions to try to solve these challenges, like reading business books and then trying to figure out how to apply it to your business. Or maybe joining a Facebook group or two and then wading through all the negativity and BS that's in there. Maybe you've joined a CEO group or a networking group, but they don't understand construction because they don't own construction businesses. And maybe you've even joined a local group of people doing the same type of work, but they're your competitors, and you're not really sure how transparent they're being or how transparent you should be. Imagine being able to make confident decisions about your business. I'm talking about new hires, new systems, new processes, when to fire bad clients, when and how to grow your business. Imagine having the security and support from a group of peers who are doing the same type of work, who are not in your backyard, they're not your competitors, where you could say, here's what I'm having challenges with, how would you work through this? Well, I'd like to tell you about the Builder Mastermind group, which is helping dozens of construction business owners solve those exact challenges. Here's how it works. When you join the Builder Mastermind group, you'll be placed in a small group of other construction business owners who are doing similar work with similar sized businesses, and they're not competing with you. Number two, you'll have monthly calls with your small group where you'll discuss challenges and best practices around a specific topic. Number three, you'll receive an execution plan to prepare for each month's call and to have a way to figure out your action items so that you can execute on them after the call. And then number four, you'll also receive a summary of ideas and resources shared from all the small groups. In addition to that, you'll be part of a Slack channel where you can message people in your small group or people in other small groups as well. To get all of the details and see what our Builder Mastermind group members would tell you about their experience, go to buildermastermindgroup.com. That's buildermastermindgroup.com. Now, without further ado, let's jump into my interview with Monish Khadye from Brisbane, Australia. Enjoy. All right, Mr. Khadye, welcome to the podcast. I appreciate you being on here. You're in a little different part of the world than some people, but we'll get to that in just a second. So tell us who you are, the name of your business, what kind of work you do, and where you're located.
So my name is Monish Khadye, and my wife Michelle and I own and run Khadye Design and Construction, and we're based in Brisbane, which is in the state of Queensland, Australia. And as a good landmark, I guess, it's right near Australia Zoo. Well, sort of near Australia Zoo, and in between the Sunshine Coast and the Gold Coast of Australia. So yeah, quite a beautiful place to live in.
Yeah. And what kind of work do you specialize in?
So we specialize in doing basically turnkey design and construct for renovations or remodeling, extensions, which is additions to the back of a property or front of a property or whatever. And also we have a lot of Queenslander style homes, which are timber homes, which can be raised and you can build another story underneath. So we do a fair bit of that here as well.
So tell us about how you started the business and why.
So going back, so both Michelle and I have had about a 12-year career each. And in those 12 years myself, I started off as an apprentice carpenter, and I then did my diploma. I went to uni while working full-time and studying full-time as well. And I eventually became a commercial project manager. And I did that for about 5 years. And that's where I ended my career. And the last year was in London, which was really awesome. And Michelle, running parallel, she did uni first. She studied for 4 years as an interior designer. And she went through, and she's, between the two of us, she's definitely the overachiever. Like, she's done massive hotels. She's had clients who are actually multi-billionaires with a B, and she's done projects overseas, quite a few of them as well. So basically we finished off in a year in London, and we decided to do that in our late 20s as a, go to London for a couple of years, get that experience and get to travel as well. And we decided that after we come back, we would potentially start a business and then look into starting a family and stuff like that too. And at the end of our trip in London, we traveled for 5 months. We traveled as backpackers around Europe for 5 months together, which was actually what sort of fused the whole business relationship. So we went from just being husband and wife to, being around each other 24/7, whereas before that we weren't really. And we decided that this is the right move for us because we want a lifestyle where the two of us are working together on projects. And then eventually, when we have children, that we could potentially work from home in a small office and, both can be a part of our kids' lives growing up until they go to school anyway. And so, yeah, there was about nearly 3 years ago now, we came back to Australia in January 2019. We started our business right then and there. And in the early days, it was just the two of us for, I think, the first 8 months. And there was times where Michelle and I would be painting and things like that on the weekend. But, that's, as every small business owner will tell you, you've got to do whatever needs to be done to start off. We took a massive pay cut when we started our business. And it did provide us with what we wanted in exchange, which was to basically do every day what we want to do the way we want to do it. So we choose our clients. We're very selective about who we work with. I think I've used the term before. We prefer having dinner date clients. So it's people, you'd be happy to go out on a dinner date with and get along with well and stuff. That allows us to usually throughout the project have pleasant interactions with them. We choose our staff that work with us. We choose our subcontractors and our supply chain that works with us as well. And it's, with nearly 3 years in, we can see how that whole system's working because we really get along with our clients, our staff, our subcontractors. There's not those tiny little battles where, you probably know yourself, but when I was a commercial project manager working for massive corporations, there was a lot of ego being thrown around and this and that. And I did some very challenging projects, but the satisfaction just was never there. And I guess my answer to the question why would be going back to, I distinctly remember when I was a second year apprentice and working in this one particular project in East Brisbane, where we did what we're doing now, where we raised the house and we built it underneath. And the clients were so happy that they took my boss, the builder at the time, and our little team out for lunch for a steak. And I remember a conversation where they were saying to my boss how everyone always talks about building's really difficult and this and that, whereas he made the process so easy for them and how much they appreciated it and stuff. And that memory kind of stuck out to me throughout my career. And so when I'd had such a diverse career and I got to this point where when we moved back from London, it was like, all right, we do this now or it's never going to happen. And we kind of look back at, all right, what were our most memorable and enjoyable moments in our career? And so I decided to, I want to do that. And that's where we're at now, pretty much. That's great.
Several things I want to touch on there. How did you make the transition from carpenter to project manager? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, it was actually quite a tough journey, I'd say. So I'll start with school. I guess I wasn't really a big academic fan, I guess, in high school, like most, I think, I don't know, I can't really talk about most people, but I just didn't like it. And I was more of the type to get into sport or do stuff with my hands and whatever. And when I finished high school, I just did general labouring for nearly a year because I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I did about 6 weeks of an electrical apprenticeship, which I didn't really enjoy. It wasn't enough manual or physical labour involved in it. And it's quite funny, but I saw the carpenters on site playing with nail guns and I was like, that looks fun. I want to do that. It sounds stupid, but that's how I started my career. And so I was like, yep, I want to do that. And I got into a carpentry apprenticeship, which was January 2008. And our first year was awesome. And as you know, we got to October, November 2008. We had the GFC and we certainly felt the effects of that here in Australia as well. So the second year was a little bit up and down in terms of when we had work or not. And that's when I decided to further educate myself, just so when I'm 40 and have kids, I've got more options. And I started studying the diploma. And as I was doing the diploma, I found out that I really enjoy studying construction. It was completely opposite to school. Like it was, I couldn't put the books down sort of thing. And it was tying into what we were doing at work as well. And as I finished the diploma, I'd already decided that one day I'd like to go to uni, whether that's even just studying part-time. And it kind of put in my brain that, I don't have to be a carpenter my whole life. I can educate myself. I can work my way up to becoming a project manager and a construction manager. And that was the goal when I was 21, 22, whatever it was. And I thought I would become a project manager by the time I'd be 40. And it'd be nice to get off the tools and, when your body's kind of taking a beating. And for whatever reason, I became project manager when I was 25. And it was like those 3 years were pretty hard. I faced a lot of rejection. I applied to, hundreds of jobs. I even offered to work for free for some large companies and I didn't even get a call back sort of thing. But eventually what matters is the people that did give me a shot. It was actually, worked out really well. Like all the opportunities I've had, I'm really grateful for because I've had the opportunity to work for and with some very talented people. And as the project management thing went further on, I realized how this is a completely different skill set to building, like to just building. So as a project manager, you're sitting in meetings with various personalities. So, clients, engineers, architects, certifiers, whatever. And your job goes from just getting something built to working together with everyone to steer them in a direction where your project's finishing on budget, in time, everyone's walking away happy and stuff like that. So there were really tough years for me to learn that, especially, as someone who's 25, 26 years old, working with people who are well in their 40s and 50s. Sort of. But I did learn a lot in that phase. And then it's when I moved to London, I completely decided that, my career doesn't really matter that much in London. Like, if worst case, if I lose my job or whatever, I can just move back to Australia and I'll be fine. I've got, people that I've worked with there before and whatnot. So I decided to take a different approach in London. While I was still a PM here, I would say, I was quite high strung, I was quite aggressive, and I was very goal driven. And I didn't really care so much about people. I was very aggressive in terms of getting things done. When I moved to London, I decided to just focus on having pleasant interactions with people, instead of being that aggressive, assertive project manager type. And turns out I got better results, because not only did all the projects go well, but the clients loved me, my colleagues loved me, and I personally had a good time. Like, I wasn't always on edge, sort of thing. And I made a few rules for myself when I went to London. And one of the rules that I still use, works really well for me, is with my emails. So you would have probably noticed as well. With my emails, I'll say good morning, good afternoon, or whatever. And then, hope you're having a good week, or you've had a good weekend, something personal usually. And then at the bottom, I've got my signature in there, but I always say thank you with an exclamation mark. And having that does not allow me to be a jerk in between. So I have no choice but to, communicate in a pleasant way in between. I just can't. If I start and finish an email that way, there's no way I can be aggressive, whatever. It just doesn't work. And so there have been occasions in the early days when I made that rule, I typed that up, and then I typed up whatever in the middle. And I was like, yeah, this doesn't work. And, either read the email or ended up just calling the individual and having a chat, and it all went well. And so I think that whole going from the carpenter to a project manager, learning all those skill sets, and then coming back to the drawing board when we started our business. I was back on the tools, but I was very fortunate to have this collection of acquired skills from my project management experience, where not only could I build, but I could also speak to clients or, run a design and stuff. And I think that's where the strength comes in our whole design and construction element, that, I've been from one end to the other. And I always have this attitude where I'm happy to ask foolish questions. If I don't understand something, I'll ask people. And it sort of allows me to learn new things every day. But when we have problems, regardless whether that's a design issue, a construction issue, a safety issue, whatever, chances are that I've come across this issue in the past. And so it's easier for me to deal with them, and then to also help people out and learn and whatnot. So I'm really glad, my career went on the trajectory that it did. If I had gone to uni straight out of high school, there's no way I don't think I would have finished the degree, to be completely honest. I would have probably dropped out. And besides that, I feel like construction itself has personally brought so much value into my life. Like, the people that I've met, the skills, the handcrafted skills that I've learned, the appreciation you could have for how much effort people put in, and how much pride they have in what they do and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm glad I did it that way, because you always hear, on site especially, it's like, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's doing, he's come from uni. Or you hear people saying, a tradesman doesn't necessarily make a good manager and stuff like that. And I've kind of defied both those odds. And I can tell you, like, and I want to say that because I'm sure there's other guys there that are kind of like, I've done this for 10 years. I'm a carpenter, but I really want to go to uni, but I don't know if it's for me. I didn't do well at school. I don't know whether, I'll do well at uni. And I'm telling you firsthand that I sucked at school, and I finished uni with an honours degree, and I didn't even try. And it was only because I was so passionate about what I was learning. It was very interesting to me. And I'm sure there's other guys that will probably find themselves in the same boat.
Yeah, that's great. I think I remember you telling me a story about what happened toward the end of your time in London when you, I remember bits and pieces, but talk about, I think it was your last month in London. Maybe it was something counterintuitive happened, as I recall. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So in London, like I said, I had the best summer in London to finish off my career. And I had really great clients, great colleagues and everything just went well. And I was genuinely just having a great time. And then it came to a point when, Michelle and I decided that, all right, we want to spend the winter traveling and then get back to Australia in 2019 and start our own business. And I had to meet with our director and say, this is it. This is my notice. I'm going to leave in, I think it was like 4 weeks or whatever I gave. And the director was like, you know what, just hold on to that thought. We'll talk about this again tomorrow. And then I went and sat down with him the next day, and he was like, we really want you to stay because the client that you've been working for really enjoyed having you there as a PM. And, there's an upcoming project where they'd like you to have you on board. And I threw Michelle under the bus, and I was like, nah, my wife hates it here. She hasn't liked it, and we need to move back. And he was like, she's an interior designer. We've got a team of designers in here. We're happy to hire her. And this is without them interviewing her or whatever either. And I was like, no, it's not going to work. And then he pulled out the last resort, and he was like, all right, if you stay for another 6 months, we'll give you £20,000 as a one-time bonus. And that's when I was like, that's a massive sum of money for anyone, really. And, I was like, all right, I'll come back to you on this. And I knew what the answer was going to be, but I tried to convince Michelle anyway. And she's like, there's no way we're doing it. Well, she's like, I've planned everything. I've planned these 5 months of us traveling. And she's like, we're never going to get these seasons again. We're never going to be this age again and stuff. And I kind of then had to just decide, all right, it's not really about the money anymore. It's, I've had, like, most of my career, I've worked 6-day weeks. And while working full-time, I've studied full-time most times also. So I've had very little time to spend with Michelle and stuff like that. And this was like a pretty big thing for me to turn over and say to him no. And, like, I still spoke to them after I finished and stuff like that. And he wished me best of luck to come back home and start a business here. So I didn't leave on bad terms or anything like that. But yeah, to me personally, it was very interesting to see that end result after a year of me saying to myself, I'm going to try a completely different approach to my career this year and and see how it works out. And, like, it really worked out. And if I was still in Brisbane, I wouldn't have done that because, I kind of grew up in that environment. So I wouldn't have just changed overnight. But in London, I could have a different persona when it came to my career, and it was okay to test it out. But yeah, it was good to see that being nice works compared to what I used to believe before.
See, that's counterintuitive to a lot of people. And so why do you think that works? Why do you think the I want to have pleasant interactions with people approach? Why was it good for you? Why was it good for your customers? Why did it work? What do you think?
So, well, there's two aspects of it. Like, I guess I wasn't just being nice, right? So this was when I was in my 5th year as a project manager. So I had developed, and, you hear the thing, like, it doesn't get easier, you just get better at it. And I feel like that was the combination. So I was a lot more competent as a project manager. So I was a lot more organized. I knew, how to how to run a project in terms of sticking to the schedule, sticking to the budget, health and safety and all that sort of stuff. And so I focused on the key things like, how's my site manager today? Is he, how's things going for him? Is he having any problems, or how can I help him out? And same with my commercial manager and stuff like that. And then when once a week we would have subcontractor meetings and client meetings, and I lined them up. So the subcontractor meeting would be at 8 a.m. and then at 10 a.m. on the same morning would be the client meeting. And so I'd run through everything with our supply chain, whatever issues we've had, solve those problems and whatnot, and whatever we need to take to the table to the client to get decisions on. And for the client meeting, I'd buy a box of brownies and some cookies and whatnot. And my clients would come in, and there would be, I think there was like 7 or 8 of them. So the actual 2 representatives for the client, the project management team, the architects, and all that sort of stuff. And then we'd have these meetings where they'd run pretty smooth. And I knew throughout the project they'd run smooth. And at the end of the project, it all went well. We finished the project off and we all went out for drinks. And one of the PMs was saying how he loved coming to my meetings because, first of all, he got the brownies and stuff like that. But it was also, he's like, I'd come from another site where it was just chaos. But then I'd come to your site and you would sit there and very calmly just run through everything we've achieved in the week, what problems you had, how you solved them. And all we would do there is answer design-related questions or whatever. Like, we didn't really have that much to deal with. And he said it was a genuine pleasure to come to your site because everything was in order. And so, I guess my point is, if I was just a nice guy and I didn't have that side sorted, I don't think it would have ended up the same way. So, but I think being nicer was how I actually achieved it, because I was not just nice to the clients, but I was nice to my site team, my subcontractors and everything as well, and just taking everything that they're saying into consideration. I used to have this attitude where everyone's against me and, everyone's out to get me or whatever. And that probably drove a lot of that aggression, that no, whatever he's saying isn't true. Like, there's another story behind this or whatever. So I think the more confident I got in my career, the less insecure I was about those sort of things. And I feel like as I've gotten older, people have just treated me with a bit more respect compared to when I was 25, which is probably fair enough. Like, if you've got this young guy coming and telling you how to do your job and doesn't know what he's talking about, you're probably going to treat him the same way.
Yep. Great stuff. So let's talk about the unique dynamic. You and Michelle work together every day, and that's a challenge for some people. Yep. What have you found to be the keys to a successful business relationship with your spouse?
It's communication, like just communication. You have to kind of, really trust your partner and lay your cards on the table and work towards things together. It was when we first started the business, I went and caught up with one of my ex-employers, and he's a decent family man. And when I spoke to him, I was like, I see you as a role model, not only because you have a successful business, but you're one of the few individuals I know that, he's got 3 kids and like he's very dedicated to his family. And he had said to me back then, he's like, whatever goals you set, they're not your goals. They're the goals you'll have as a family unit. And so you have to kind of, and initially that probably didn't resound with me as much because I was still kind of like just starting out the business. So I was just like, just got to do whatever I got to do to be successful sort of thing. But as the time's gone on, especially at the moment, because as you know, Michelle's pregnant and we're expecting our first child in January. So now our business goals really need to be structured around how we're going to be functioning as a family and what's best for the family and stuff like that. So if we did do that from the beginning, Michelle and I set our goals together for the business as to what we want to accomplish. And right from the get-go, then you're sort of communicating in those terms. And the great thing is, you have to respect each other because you both have different strengths and weaknesses. And chances are that, and it is true for me personally, whatever my weakness is, Michelle will make up for it, and vice versa. And that's happened, multiple times over the years. So it really is working with a partnership mentality instead of saying that you're husband and wife and that you own a business. They're not two things. I feel like for us, especially, they're fused. And it's going to be interesting next year when Michelle goes on maternity leave. And, I did feel when we did come to that conclusion, I was like, oh man, I'm going to be by myself running this business. I'm not going to have my partner there with me to kind of check me when I'm getting out of control or whatever. And I think for anyone else out there who's a husband and wife team and they run their own business, I'm sure they understand how blurred those lines are between what's work and what's family. And I'm sure, they've probably figured this out, but it is important to have clear boundaries between your working relationship and your marriage. I think it's really important to still continue being husband and wife at the end of the day, if that makes sense. Like when you sit down for dinner, you don't want to be sitting there and talking about work or a specific client or how this had an issue or this and whatnot. So when we sit down for dinner, we're usually talking about what our plans are for the weekend and things like that. So I think it's pretty important to learn how to switch off and be able to do that. I think a lot of people will get genuine pleasure from working with their partners, and some people might not be compatible. It's kind of like going back to colleagues as well, right? Like you'll see in some teams, some team members just aren't effective at working together. That doesn't mean that they'll have a bad marriage because they're two completely different aspects. And until you try it out, you're not going to know.
Yeah, good advice. So let's talk about failure or apparent failure. I have some theories about failure. We won't get into that. But how has a failure or apparent failure set you up for later success? Does anything come to mind there?
Look, my attitude to failures is I see every failure is a lesson learned. And you can't really, if you're not failing, you're not taking risks. That's my principle. Like if the only way you don't fail is by not doing it, by sitting at home and whatever. So every time we've failed, I tend to try and investigate what caused the failure. And it's not really about, blaming people or blaming myself or the situation or whatever. It's looking at what if we were to do this again, what is the one or two things we would change to try and make this a success and not a failure. And that helps us then when we do get to the next part and we're running that same scenario again, that we avoid that mistake. So I think failures are quite important. As I said before, like I've had plenty of rejection. I've certainly failed plenty of times. I've made plenty of mistakes. I still do, probably on a daily basis. But I don't make it into a massive thing, if that makes sense. Like if I've failed at something, one of the practices I've put in place about 5 years ago is I journal most mornings. And so I journal about, what's bothering me or where I failed or whatever and why and what I need to do to fix it. It helps me kind of think in a linear pattern instead of it just turning into, a spiral in my head. So I would say over these last 3 years, we've had several small failures, if you want to call them that. And it's, I guess, like nothing really stands out too much as such that I can successfully say that it's a failure. I think it's just the practice of improving small bits and pieces and whatever's not working to change it and move on, sort of thing. But yeah, no, I don't think anything big is coming to my mind.
Yeah, I think failure is a bit of a myth.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't know that failure really exists. It's sort of like No offense to any flat earthers. You're not a flat earther, are you?
No.
Okay. So flat earthers believe there's like the edge of the earth, and at some point you could sail off. And I read an article during COVID in 2020, an Italian couple decided they were going to go sail to the edge of the earth. And not surprisingly, they didn't find it, but they did end up washed up on some island, and they got arrested and thrown in jail for traveling during COVID. But they were disappointed to find out that there was no edge of the earth. And I think failure is kind of the same way. It's this myth that we're all scared of. We think it's there, but it doesn't really exist. And it's like the boogeyman or the monsters under your bed. It just doesn't exist. I've gone through what at the time felt like massive failure, financial, a variety of failures. I could probably do a podcast series on the mistakes I've made, and they felt a lot like failure at the moment, but in a lot of cases, those failures set me up for the next thing. And I wouldn't be where I'm at today without those those events that felt like failure at the time. But that's good.
It's probably like, if I'm touching on that, like in terms of failure, I guess, like in my years as a project manager, I was, I've taken on some pretty challenging projects, and there was one in particular that went for over a year, and I kind of held on to that as a failure because it just didn't go well. But looking back on it, it was probably the only single project that has taught me so much stuff. Other than, every time a project goes well, you don't really learn anything from it. Whereas when you've got something that is bad, and so bad for, a year, you kind of learn to put a lot of rules in place and make sure it was really one of those things where I found my limits and I went past it several times, and it did affect me mentally and physically quite substantially. But now I know where that limit is, and I think if I were to time travel and go back to, this was 6 or 7 years ago, if I were to go back then now, I'm probably not just more skilled and competent as someone who manages a construction project, but as an individual who's managing his own health and well-being, like his own productivity, his own interactions with people a lot better. And I feel like that year would have been substantially easier for me. So, but if I hadn't gone through that year, I wouldn't be who I am today. So I'm actually quite grateful for, all the bad stuff that's happened in my life, because I feel like it's made me substantially stronger and more capable of enduring whatever else.
Yeah. I read recently that success doesn't teach you anything. It only reinforces your superstitions.
Yeah.
And I agree. Failure, or apparent failure, teaches you things, but when things don't go well, you just get these misconceptions about how great you are and how great the world is and how things work, and it just doesn't seem to be the case. I talked to a young guy several years ago, just started his business. He had been in business for about 6 months, and I said, "So how would you describe your first 6 months in business?" And he said, "Magical." And I thought, wow, you might be in for a surprise. So get ready.
I think success probably makes you complacent.
Yeah.
Because, why improve when what you're doing is working? And like you said, when tough times come, and as everyone knows, our industry is quite cyclical. Like, you're never gonna, like, what's happening right now isn't going to stay at that level for years to come. So when things do go downhill, that's when all those years of endurance help out, because you know that this is temporary and you're gonna go back up eventually, and you just gotta last through that period.
Yeah, it's anybody who's prideful and arrogant in the construction industry just hasn't been through that downturn yet. They haven't been humbled yet. And for any of us who went through the 2007, 2008, 9, 10 downturn, yeah, we We've been through enough to know that we don't have the Midas touch. Not everything we touch turns to gold. Yeah. One of my other favorite questions is this: what is one thing you believe to be true about business that some people would consider unconventional, maybe even a little crazy?
So, like we were saying just before about how Michelle and I set our goals together for the business and stuff. When you first start a business and you kind of looking into how to start a business, I guess, and I've read heaps of business books and stuff like that, but when you're doing your business plan initially, it's about that first mission statement or vision statement or whatever it is. And we kind of racked our brains for ages to what we want it to be. And what we decided before we started the business was, we don't want to be the biggest or the best or whatever. We want to be the best business to work with and work for, or the best builder to work with and work for. And our goal there was to create this environment where our clients, our supply chain, and our staff are quite happy to be involved. They're satisfied. And, when we're finished with a project or a subcontractor, or our staff decide to leave and go somewhere else, that they leave happy and as better people, and they've gained skills or whatever it might be. And for a business our size, as you know yourself, like we've only got 3 employees, and I do performance reviews with my guys and goal setting to help them out. It's something I wish someone did with me when I was a lot younger. And doing that process helps Michelle and I kind of set the goals for the business to suit our staff. And I know that doesn't sound conventional, but where we're at, like 3 years in, is we've got staff that absolutely love coming to work. Like, these guys hate taking holidays. It's so weird. They get, in Australia, so they get, because they're employees, they get 4 weeks of annual leave a year. They don't take time off. They don't want to. They get bored at home. They want to be at work. And it's a really weird thing, but it's, it's kind of cool that that's where we're at. And we, with Andrew, who's now our site supervisor, we decided to pay for him to go to university from next year on a part-time basis, because just like me, it's something that he's always wanted to do and he wants to learn. And so we're helping facilitate that for him. And we ummed and ahed about, most employers, if they were in that situation, you'd do a contract where you're like, all right, we're going to pay for X number of years, but then you got to work for us for Y number of years and stuff like that. And we just got to the point where we were like, no, you know what? We're just gonna say to them, right, we're gonna pay for everything on a semester basis, and we'll pay for as long as you work with us. And if you choose to leave, that's up to you. There's not, really, I don't want to tie someone down to us, basically. And even with our other 2 guys, we're a lot more in tune with their needs and, what they want to achieve as individuals. And that has actually driven a lot of success to our business. So as you probably know now, that we currently have the same number of staff, the same number of subcontractors, and our turnover has increased over 30% year on year. So, but our team hasn't changed. And it's not like, it's amazing that having that process and kind of having a carrot in front of someone is just they're off to themselves. So like this week's a prime example. So Michelle and I, like, this is the first time we're having time off during the year. And we kind of worked over the last few weeks to get everyone set up and make sure that we can have this time off and no one call us and stuff. And, the guys, I was like, you get 1 phone call a day, so make it count. And I haven't got a phone call yet. And we're kind of 5 days into this time off. So, and it's cool to see that it's a very mutually beneficial thing. There's a lot of mutual respect there as well. And the team is very, like, there's a massive sense of camaraderie between them. Like, we're all working towards the same goals. It's really amazing way to run a company. And it's not something, I could have read in any business book or whatever. This is just something that I've found out over the last 3 years, and it's working out really well. There is, I've had to previously let go of individuals and let go of a subcontracted company, and it wasn't because they were good people. I really liked them, and the reason we had to make the switch is because they just weren't the right fit for the long term, and they were probably the hardest decisions I've had to make. Like I've had sleepless nights because I've let go of people who were with us for 8 months or a year and a half and that sort of stuff. But we're in this place now where everyone is having a good time. And like, I can't stress how important that is, because everything just seems to work a lot better. We very rarely have defects. We very rarely, we never really have arguments on site or whatever. And at the end of every project, the feedback we get from clients is like, you guys are very polite, very respectful. They're very, they listen to us. Like, it's cool to see that if you focus on providing an environment for people to achieve what they want to achieve, the business just it just follows their growth, really. It's not that, the business needs this and you have to be this person. It's like, all right, let's see what you can do and we'll just go in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll have to say, having seen your performance review approach, I've worked with Fortune 50 companies with 300 or 400 employees as an employee, and I've never seen anything as good as your performance reviews. Just your whole approach, the format that you use, and then even the responses from your people that you shared with me are pretty remarkable. And I've had the opportunity to speak with Andrew a couple of times, and yeah, it just works. So no, that's fantastic. I think that's something you've cracked the code on. You found something that is not you're not going to hear Jack Welch from GE and those type of business gurus say anything like that, but it works. It works for you. Definitely. Yeah.
Well, if we go back to what you asked about, what you've learned from your failures and what's been a successful. So this is probably an area that I have personally failed at several times, like in my younger years sort of thing. And so the whole point of me doing this was, setting quite clear expectations to the guys, but also helping them achieve what their goals are. Like a lot of these guys, just want to do well in life. Like they want to buy a house, they want to do this, do that, whatever it is. And they genuinely, most of their goals are for them to become happier. And it's amazing that Michelle and I are in this position with the company where we can help them achieve that. And it brings me genuine pleasure. Like out of everything in life I've done, like this to me, success to me is when, one of our guys achieves their goals that they'd set. It's awesome. It's a very rewarding feeling. And you can't, no one can kind of take it away from you in a sense. And it's just awesome.
Yeah. Yep. I love it. So we've been working together in my coaching program for about 6 months now. I didn't realize it had been that long.
Yeah.
So what was the challenge or the problem or the issue that you were having that led you to contact me about working together initially?
Well, it's something, I guess, I thought I had a problem, a certain problem, but then once you came in, I realized it was a different problem. So the reason we first, I guess, initiated contact with you was because we were planning to have a baby. And then, when Michelle fell pregnant, we were like, all right, we've got it was 8 months or whatever it is to get our act together, because we need to figure out how we're going to continue the business without Michelle working daily, or without Michelle having to work daily, I should say. Like we want to give enough time to our child with Michelle to begin with, instead of her having to come back to work and because she's stuck here. Like I don't want her to end up in that situation. And it was at the right point for us to say, all right, we need external help to figure this out, because through COVID and everything, and I'm sure other business owners could relate. There's a lot of anxiety that built up over that time, and it's hard enough starting your own business and getting it off the ground, but then having all this other stuff thrown at you, like not knowing, what does the future look like? Because in a normal market, you can look at statistics, and you look at market conditions. You can look at the demand for housing, and you can make statistical decisions as to what your next move is in your business. But with COVID, that all just went out the water. You're like, what do you do? And now you can see the issues with supply, with increased demand, and people kind of losing out because they've signed a contract for 100K, and now their materials are costing more than that, and they're in strife and stuff like that. So it got to this point in, I think it was it April this year, April or May? I think it was somewhere around there. But like, we were kind of like, all right, we're pregnant now. We need to, focus the next 6 months on getting the business to where we need it to be, so that Michelle can go on leave. And when because I asked you for 2 or 3 other contractors that you've done work for, so I could just see what value added to their business. I sent them these emails, and it was very like analytical. It was like, what percentage did your revenue go up by? What percentage did it was very numerical and stuff. And I think it was Neil Sundaresh that was kind of like, hey, there is that aspect, but you'll find out there's this other side where you'll find that your lifestyle improves, and you feel calm about what you're doing and stuff like that. And it kind of, what he said kind of made sense to me then. And as we've worked over the first 2-3 months, that sort of started clicking. And there's obviously, we have hit the numbers because we set goals and we worked through. But the biggest thing to me personally was now, and this is probably people that are in that husband and wife business will relate to, I felt that if I was stressed at, let's say, 10 out of 1 to 10, I could only really reveal to Michelle that my stress level was at a 4 or a 5, because I didn't want her to kind of take on all that stress and stuff as well. And like we said before, like at the end of the day, I'm the director of the company. I make the big, scary decisions. When it comes to letting go of people, I have to be the one that makes the decision, and then I'm the one that has to go and say, hey, this is it, and stuff like that. And when there is a crisis or whatever, I'm the one that's solving it. So where I was stuck was, I just felt very lonely. Although I had my wife there, it was because I didn't want her feeling the pressure as well. I was kind of taking too much on, and I just felt like this is getting too hard, and I need someone to talk to who can help me think things through and figure out what the next move is. Because there was a lot of anxiety between, there's 100 different problems to fix. Where do I start? And if I do this, is this the right thing to do, or I'm going to stuff something else up? And just not, it's something you can't Google. You can't Google this. You can't go and read a book and it tells you the answer sort of thing. You kind of, in the moment, you have to figure this stuff out. And when you first came on board, and we did our initial sort of goal setting thing, where Michelle and I sat down, we listed out what we want the business to do, what we want, in our own lifestyle and stuff. That was a great exercise to do. Even though we've been doing our own goal setting, that was still better to kind of go, all right, over the next 6 months or whatever, this is what we want to achieve, and this is what we'd like Todd to help us with. And then the other thing that you brought to the table for me personally was accountability for myself, because we now had these execution plans where, although you helped me, there were still my goals. It wasn't that you were kind of spoon feeding me and saying, hey, do this and this will happen, just wait and watch. It wasn't that. It was like, all right, let's work through this problem. There's multiple solutions, and you'd kind of jump in and give me advice and stuff. And then we started doing that. And then the biggest, like Neil had said, I've just become a lot calmer as an individual. And something that Michelle really, really hates still is, she's been telling me for years, she's like, man, stop checking your emails on the weekend. Stop hanging your phone with you out of hours. And you and I sat down, I think it was like one morning you're just like, hey, you can just get this app that blocks your emails and stuff. And I was like, okay. And I did it. And then 2 days later, I was like, Michelle, you're not going to believe, I feel so much better because I'm not accessing my email. And she was just like, what do you mean? I've been telling you this for the last 6 years. And, so there's things like that. Like, it was when I don't listen to my wife, but I'll listen to someone that's, someone else that I respect and stuff. It's not that I don't respect my wife, but it's just, you're used to just blanking out certain things, I guess. But I'll listen to you and it worked. And, it's actually helped me be more productive and achieve my goals, which I thought was going to be counterproductive, but it's not. So, yeah, we've hit our goals, but then I've also managed to create a lot of time for myself. I spend a lot more time with Michelle on the weekends and stuff. Like we spend time with our family, our friends, and I'm actually present instead of checking my emails and switching off mentally and stuff like that. So I think that's something that I hadn't pictured as a result of this partnership sort of. So that was definitely good.
So take us to the moment when you realized that the work that you were doing, and you did all the work, but take us to the moment when you realized that the work you were doing in the coaching program was actually helping and it was actually solving some problems.
I think there were multiple steps because it was really good that you helped me identify our annual goals or set our annual goals, then break them down into quarterly goals. And then there would be certain tasks I would need to do between our meetings to achieve. And I kind of, and I still don't, I wouldn't want to turn up and be like, oh, I did nothing, Todd. The last 2 weeks, I just did nothing. I would hate to do that. So I always made sure that I ticked my tasks off. And there were usually, small things that you kind of just getting on top of. But as I was saying before, when you've got like 100 things to fix and you don't know where to start, having that very structured approach helped substantially because you could see incrementally the business was slowly improving. And I think, was it a month and a half into our first quarter, I think you were like, you've done your first 3 months. You've achieved your goals for the first 3 months. And you're like, we need to set better goals for you or harder goals for you moving forward sort of thing. And I think that was when the numbers were hitting. We've got the board where we were like, all right, we need to quote so much, so we win so much, so we can deliver so much and stuff like that. And those numbers we were hitting those numbers. And that was something that was very, I guess, reinforcing to know that all those little things that I've been doing are actually working towards something else. And then there were those, the rules that you helped me set for myself in terms of creating time, figuring out what makes me productive, and then setting rules for my site team and stuff like that. And yeah, I think because I started this with the numbers in mind, to see that within the first 6 weeks or whatever, we were on track to hit those numbers. And we've certainly, we're 6 months in now, we certainly hit those numbers. So, and I think, as I was saying before, there's definitely more demand at the moment and all that sort of stuff. But regardless, considering that we have the exact same team and team structure as last year, but our revenue has gone up by 30%, means what you and I have been working together is definitely working. It's not the demand, because there are several other builders up there that are riding this demand wave, and good on them, make hay while the sun shines. And you can see there's people that are being employed regardless of their skills and whatnot, because you have to kind of do it to keep up with demand. Whereas we're kind of finding out that our team has a much greater potential of delivering work than we have. So the system's gotten more efficient.
Yeah, fantastic. So how's life different now after the work you've done over the past few months?
It's really good to see and hear, not just from our clients, but from our staff and our supply chain. So when I do these performance reviews, the way I've set them up is so, the guys have their key performance indicators and they rate themselves based on that. And then the next step is they're meant to criticize us and like myself and Michelle and the company, and identify any faults, and so we can work on them together. And initially, there was a couple of things that we should improve this, improve that, and now it's like, man, and they're like, man, we've improved so much. Like everything's just running so much smoother. We're not having as many issues and stuff like that. And the way I think I'm in your builder mastermind group as well, and I'm talking to, I think it was like 4 builders that are pretty much delivering the same type of work and similar setups. And when we're talking about problems, it's like, yeah, I don't have this problem, and I'm giving them solutions which they're taking down and using. And that again is like reinforcement for me to know that what we've done is working. So, in terms of solving problems, we have automated our systems so much, and we helped our staff be capable of running these. We've helped our subcontractors kind of blend into that system and use, checklists for quality assurance. We use daily logs to provide feedback to clients and photos at the end of every day, and just maintain a high level of communication. It's gotten rid of a lot of chaos. And so now I feel like we're working on projects productively. We're not, there's always going to be defects and issues that you've got to go and fix. It's an industry where I don't think it's possible to attain 100% at all times. There's just too much room for human error. But we've reduced that substantially. So, and things are getting caught out before they could go wrong because the system's set up that way. And it's just resulting in a much better streamlined process for everyone to be a part of, get more enjoyment out of. And because we kind of know what we're doing well, we want to do more of it, right? Because it makes sense. We've got a system, let's use the system. And so we're now more so taking on the type of clients and the type of projects that suit our system, where we can provide or we can deliver the best value. Not just me as an individual or Michelle as a designer, but our whole team can add value to that project and to that specific client. So it's helping me say no a lot more often. Because one of our things was, as you know, I wanted to, like, my biggest thing was, because of the way my apprenticeship had gone with the GFC and stuff, was to make sure that we can always keep our staff employed and give them the hours that they need to, so they can pay their rent and all that sort of stuff. And so my thing's always been not having holes in our schedule. And now that we actually have 6 months worth of backlog, we are in this awesome position where I can think more positively, instead of being in fear that, hey, I need to fill this gap. So I'm going to end up saying yes to a project that doesn't necessarily, tick all our boxes, but I have to say yes to keep you guys busy. I don't have to do that anymore. Now I can kind of say no to a lot more things and say yes to the things that are good projects for us as a business, but also are good projects for our staff and subcontractors to work on and actually get genuine pleasure out of.
Yeah, great stuff. So same team, revenue is up 30%. Defects are down, 6 months of backlog, less chaos. You're off the tools, working in the office, building the business, able to say no to the projects you want to say no to, have more time to work on the projects you want to say yes to. Yeah, you've made tremendous progress in 6 months. It's just been, it's been a fun ride. And I think at one point I warned you, like, be careful about the goals you set, because you guys just chew through goals like a tree chipper and just turn them into reality. So yeah, congratulations on the success. It's been fun. So let's talk about something you've cracked the code on. You're a systems guy, very, very smart guy. There's a lot going on there. You've cracked the code on several things, but I'm curious, what is one specific part of your business that's working well for you, that you feel like you've cracked the code on, that you'd be willing to share about?
Probably there's a couple like critical things I'd say, but the first thing would be technology and embracing technology to avoid hiring people to do the same work. So we use Builder to do all our project management and stuff like that. And initially, when we first started out, I was deciding between Co-Construct and Builder. And the reason we went for Builder was because it was a bigger beast. It catered more towards commercial projects. And so when we first started out, because that's our background, we were like, well, if we do end up doing commercial, I'd rather have the same system instead of transitioning to a different system. So we started off with there. And Builder is obviously more expensive and stuff like that. But I feel at the moment we're only probably using maybe 40-50% of its capability, and it has substantially improved efficiency. Like, there's a lot of builders out there, and there's a lot of guys my age as well that are like, oh yeah, nah, I can't do technology. It's just a bit too hard for me to use a computer and this, and I'd prefer to be old school and stuff, which is fine for you to be that way. The problem is, at the moment, to be a profitable builder and to generate the income that you should be generating, you have to do a high volume of projects. It's not the same as, it's really hard now, from what I've seen having our business. It'd be really hard to be the type of builder like my old boss used to be, where he was one man, he had 2 or 3 carpenters, he did all the estimating himself, it was all done pen and paper, and he would do maybe 2 or 3 major projects a year and work on the tools and still make a decent income and stuff. I don't think we're in the same era anymore, because in order for us to be competitive, we have to not only deliver a higher volume, but we have to do more work on each project in terms of what clients are choosing. In terms of the builder they want to work with, is someone who can communicate really well, someone who's really organized, someone who, in our case, someone who can do everything for them. Because the flip side is clients are kind of pressed for time as well. Most clients now have more than full-time jobs, and they've got kids and this and that. Like, they're not sitting at home, and they don't want to do the project management and stuff themselves. They don't have the time to do it. So they want someone that's going to do everything. So, your design, your permits, your approvals, and right down to finishing the job and handing them the keys so they can just move in and start using the space. You can't do all of this with having a higher volume of staff in the office and still expect to make a decent profit, like a livable profit. You will probably make profit, but you just got high overheads. And so for me, where technology comes in is, I find it quite easy. Once it's set up, it's quite easy to tick all those boxes from the client's perspective. It also becomes easy to make my jobs more streamlined, efficient, and profitable for subcontractors, because we're organized. So a subcontractor knows if they rock up to our job, the job's ready for them, and they can do whatever they need to do in the time allocated, and they can get out and they can make a decent profit. Whereas if they go to another builder's thing where they're disorganized and something's done to 80%, it's not quite ready, these guys have to do a second trip and stuff like that. That's where they lose money. So having the technology, so if I go back to Builder as an example, and this is something that we've worked with together, was going through and setting up the templates. So the job types have schedule templates, and then each template, each schedule item, so I'll use plumbing roughing as an example, has a checklist, and that checklist is automatically generated, right? So once a schedule goes live, everyone gets these schedule date notifications, but along with that, they also get the checklist. So they know that if they're going to go rough in, before they finish, they know this is what 100% looks like. So you're not leaving the job until all this is ticked off. And the checklist is ticked off by the subcontractor along with my site supervisor. And that, like them spending, the 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is to do that, is making sure that we're not having as many defects. So I'm not dealing with, problems as such. Because we're not having as many defects, our clients are finding like we can compress our programs a lot better. So instead of something going out for 4 or 5 months, we can kind of do it in 3 months and things like that. We also engage the same principle in the schedule with pre-construction. So when it comes to ordering, material selections, procurement, everything is now a templated thing. So it's taken a lot of time out of my daily routine or Michelle's daily routine where everything's preset. And it's not like, I'm sure Excel spreadsheets and stuff are great, but when it comes to something like Build, Share, and Co-Construct, these programs are designed specifically for construction businesses. And there is a lot in there. There are a lot of tools in there. And, you always say you got to use the right tool for the job. You don't want to be using something. So if you're still working pen and paper, still doing spreadsheets and whatever, there are way better ways to do things. So it's saving you time. And the way that's helped me out is we can now deliver a higher volume of projects which are running smoothly, more efficiently, and I'm spending less time per project. And that allows me to knock off at a reasonable time. And, and that was probably one of the biggest things. Like before we started working together, I was doing 12-hour days, 6 days a week. And it was ridiculous. Like it was just, I wasn't getting anywhere because I was doing everything from scratch. But yeah, the whole using Builder Trend and setting up templates and then seeing how much easier it is from when a contract is signed to when we first start on site, how much easier it is to get all the things done and reducing human error because we've got checklists. And yeah, it's just allowing us to deliver a lot more. That's to anyone out there who's like, I can't do technology. You need to wake up to the fact that technology is there to help you, not, like it's a tool that you need to start using. It's the same as, back in the day when they drilled for screws, there were those hand drills. Remember, they wound them up, and now you've got power drills, and then you've got cordless drills. It's just like that. Just like you want to use the latest technology so that you're competitive and you're delivering good value to your clients, to your team, and your subcontractors, because that's what's going to make you a better builder at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that's one thing. And the other thing we cracked the code on, going back to the performance reviews, like I said, so I've preset key performance indicators, and even my first year apprentice has a job description, a written job description with key performance indicators that he's got to hit. And when you do the first review with these guys, I do that 3 months in. So that's when they finish probation, and they're meant to rate themselves between 1 and 10 as to how they've performed on each KPI. And initially, the guys would give themselves a 6, 7, 8, whatever. And I'd be like, all right, what do we need to do to get you to a 10? What does 10 look like to you? And it set in them this critical thinking that, I'm not in trouble because I haven't done good enough. But if I think about what a 10 looks like, I can now become a 10. And that did happen. Like as we've progressed, the later performance reviews for those same guys, they'll come down and sit down with 9s and 10s. And it's amazing because you can see in their work ethic, they're striving to get 10s. And it's not because, I'm saying that they have to, or I'm saying if you don't get a 10, you're sacked, or, or whatever. They can see that they are just doing better. And it's ticking this mental box where I'm a 10 sort of thing. And then when they give themselves 9s, it's the same thing. They'll criticize whatever they're not doing well. And they know they're like, oh, this is what I need to improve on. And they go further on and improve on that as well. And something I haven't told you I've started doing as well is I've started doing peer reviews. So at performance review time, I'll get the other two to fill out the same KPIs, rate their colleague, and provide constructive criticism. And I'm like, man, if you give that guy a 10, I want to know why. You can't just be like, oh, here's a 10 because he's your mate. You got to tell me exactly why that is. And they're quite descriptive in their feedback. And again, it puts in this sense of camaraderie where they're not just patting each other's backs. They're saying, you're doing this really well, and it's been awesome to see, and I've learned that from you, and now I'm doing it. And they'll say, hey, this is something you're not doing well, but I'm happy to teach you how to do that, so then we can improve as a team. And that is really, because we talk about automation and autonomy a lot, like that to me, the whole motivation and discipline factor. Like, there's no HR here. There's no one here. I don't go to site and yell at my guys. Like, never happens. The only time I'll yell at them is if a site's not clean. That's probably my biggest stickler. But other than that, like, if things go wrong all the time, and you kind of deconstruct them and you figure out how to fix them next time. But we're at this place now where everyone's looking out for each other. Everyone wants to do better, and the most important thing is they know how to. So unless you kind of show them what that looks like, it's, there's people out there that will just expect you to be a 10, but they don't show you what a 10 looks like, or how, I'm going to help you get there. They don't do that. And so you kind of just getting yelled at for not being good enough. Whereas I would rather help people become what they think is a 10. And I think that's certainly, when we talk about like increasing turnover and stuff and efficiency, that certainly helped out substantially as well.
Yeah, I love how your approach to performance reviews is, okay, what are your goals? Let's set better goals. Let's get really clear on goals. And then they set the goals, and then they rate themselves on the goals, and they beat themselves up, and they criticize themselves. And you come in and say, hey, listen, you're doing better than you thought. You're really doing pretty well. And they're reviewing each other. And one of the things you said after during one of our calls is you used a term that I've never heard before, which you said, I've delegated the ambition. You don't just delegate the task. You've delegated the ambition, and you've just helped them find their motivation and delegated the ambition. So it's, hey, what do you want? What do you want to get better at? Okay, we'll help you with this. And it just works. Yeah, it's fantastic. I think I agree. You have definitely cracked the code on performance reviews, and that's really cool to hear about the peer reviews also. I love that.
Yeah. And I think a big aspect of that is I'm quite transparent with our guys in terms of, in terms of my own mental health or whatever issues we're having with the business and stuff. Not to the point where I'm making it their problem, but I prefer to kind of keep it all as an open book, so then they can see that, we're all in this together. It's not just that I'm not hiding certain stuff from them and things like that. So I talk to them about our turnover and profitability and stuff, because I want them to have that buy-in, and they know. And we've, as time has gone on, we've rewarded our guys, we've promoted them, and we've on the side also helped them tick off their personal goals by giving them advice or whatever it might be. And so it's a very united front in that sense, where we're kind of all looking out for each other, and being transparent and being honest with the team is probably the most critical element there. If I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna, I want to become a billionaire one day and have a Lamborghini, so I want you to do extra hours, and I'm not going to pay you enough more. No one's going to do that. And that's not that it's, I probably had those goals years ago because I didn't know better. But as time's going on, I'm finding the whole personal interaction thing is definitely more rewarding to me. It's what's genuinely making me happier.
Yeah. Something else that I think, in my opinion, you've had great success with is embracing the pre-construction services agreement and transitioning your sales process to that, where you're getting paid for estimates and pre-construction work. In a nutshell, what impact has that transition had on your business?
So, initially I was kind of like, I guess everyone else is, I'm like, there's no one's going to go pay for this, because I was thinking of it as a builder. I'm like, no one's going to pay for this. And then you start thinking of it from the perspective of the clients, like you were saying, and, you look at, they're paying for value. You're actually giving them value. And the big change has been is because we are getting paid for these pre-construction services, I can now dedicate time to these handful clients instead of just doing free quotes for 100 clients. I think if you're doing free quotes, I think our win rate was like 1 in 20 or something ridiculous. And most times we're losing out because the design is over budget. So there's no builder that actually is winning the project, or you're losing out to a builder who's kind of missed stuff out in his pricing. So, you'll have a cluster where there's 2 or 3 builders that are priced here, and then there's this one guy right down the bottom, super cheap, and then that's who the client goes for. And I don't call them and see how those projects turned out, but you can only imagine what the end result there would have been. But us doing pre-construction enables us to get to know the client over that period, which is probably most important. Like and most of our clients, as you know, they come through referrals. So there's already like a positive bias between a certain relationship sort of thing. And then we get to know the client a lot better through that process. We get to work out exactly what it is that they want, because when we're building or renovating someone's house, it's usually their family home that they're going to they're going to have kids in, that the kids are going to grow old in and stuff like that. So you kind of want to, we help them think all the way through to what does this look like, how you're going to use it on a daily basis. And then we end up with a design that actually works in the long term. And as well as us, because we're getting paid, we can actually dedicate the time to do that. Whereas if we're just competing against other builders and not getting paid on quotes, I can't justify putting in that much effort in my quote. It just doesn't make sense. And so when there's the 1 or 2 clients that are saying, I'm going to pay you to quote my job and tell me exactly how much it's going to cost and help me design it too, we actually put in substantial effort. And it's probably like the whole pre-construction agreement probably isn't a profitable setup as such, but it's more so like a break-even thing. Like someone is respecting my time that I'm spending, and they're getting the value and service that I would have provided them anyway, could I afford to do that. And then it turned into the build. And when you get to the build, my goal is this whole efficiency and automation thing. My goal is by the time we finish pre-construction, we have organized as much of the build as possible. Like we should get to a point where during the build, we should have minimal issues, and issues in the sense that we're managing the client's expectation quite well as well, so that we're building exactly what they visualize we're building. And if we can get as much clarity on that as possible, the build itself is going to go quite smoother. And it's actually going to be cost effective because you're not making changes. You're not waiting on materials to turn up because you've ordered them too late and stuff like that. So I feel like the pre-construction approach is actually going to deliver better efficiency to the build and better value to the clients and to us as a construction business as well.
Yep.
And, for how much I've studied, how much I've experienced in my career, like I think it's a pretty fair thing for me to say someone needs to pay me for my time. You don't go to a doctor and be like, oh, why don't you give me a free quote and I'll think about coming and paying, and I'm going to go and get 2 other quotes from 2 other doctors. No one does that. And you got to understand, like as a builder, if you are a decent builder, you have spent a lot of time educating yourself, and you need to charge for that time, because otherwise you're not delivering the value that you're capable of delivering. You're selling yourself short.
Yeah. It really is high value to clients. And I would say with the broken supply chain and the way things are right now, the value to the client for going through a pre-construction process, buying out the project, figuring out actual lead times, maybe even procuring materials early and having them on hand, it's more valuable than ever because things have changed. And from where I sit, I don't think they're going to get better overnight. No. I think we're in this for another year probably before things start to shake out. Well, great stuff. Well, I'm sure we could talk for hours about automation and systems and processes, but I want to be a good steward of your time. I really appreciate everything you shared. It's been a pleasure working with you. And if folks want to connect with you on social media, go to your website, where's the best place or places for them to do that?
Look, I'll be honest. I'm one of those guys that isn't good at keeping in touch with people. When someone calls me or I catch up with them in person, I have the best interactions with them because when I say, what have you been up to, I genuinely mean it because I don't have social media personally. I don't have, I used to have LinkedIn and all that sort of stuff. I got rid of it years ago, and it's great because you occasionally run into people and have a good interaction. But if people do want to get in touch, they could always go through our company website, which is cartier.com.au, and send me a contact form. And, if there's other builders out there that want to reach out and have a chat or grab a coffee or whatever, I'm always happy to. I'm happy to do things that will help us improve as an industry. I feel like it's one of those industries where there's a lot of secretism. You're kind of like, oh, I'm doing this and I want to make sure that I'm the only one doing this because I don't want someone to have my competitive edge. Whereas you look at any other industry where there's substantial improvement, the improvement arrives from people sharing what they're doing well. And it's a massive, massive industry. There's no way you can kind of say, oh, I told this one guy that I do these things this way and all of a sudden I don't have any work left for me. It's just not going to happen. So you kind of have to understand you're better off just, sharing what you're doing well. So then you're competing with people that are on your level instead of competing people that are, not planning projects well or not pricing projects well. Because you hear about a lot of people going broke, unfortunately, especially at the moment. It's like, it's weird. It's a boom and then there's people going broke, it's pretty sad to hear about this sort of thing. And you kind of wish that these guys had got the help that they needed or whatever, and that it was readily available. So yeah, if you want to reach out to me, it's through the company website. I think we've got the company Instagram and Facebook as well, but it's Michelle that is in control of it. I don't really like having that on my phone. So if you get on our website and send through a contact form, I can probably get in touch by email or something.
Sounds great. Well, I'll include that link in the show notes. Well, thanks so much for the time and for everything you shared. And I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Hey, thanks to you. Like it's, and I think it's something important to touch on. Like it's not that you're not paying me to come out here and say these sort of things and whatnot. And I was saying to Michelle before that our life, like my personal life, has improved substantially since you've come on board and you've been helping us out, and it's been awesome. And you've got this approach when I sit down with you where you're very calm, you hear me out, and then you offer your 2 cents without sounding too, I guess, judgmental or overbearing and being hard and fast with the rules and stuff. And I think for us anyway, I think it's been a great chemistry so far. You've definitely added value to my business and my life. And yeah, I'm really grateful that our paths crossed. And, I'd been listening to this podcast for years, man. So it's a privilege that I'm now on one of these episodes. And it's actually hard to believe. It's weird, but no, it's great.
Fantastic. This has been one of my favorite conversations so far, and I appreciate all the kind words. So,
all right.
Thanks a lot, man. I'll see you on the next call.
Thanks, mate. Talk to you. Bye.
There you go. Hope you took notes from that conversation. As always, I challenge you to take at least one thing away from this that you're going to implement, that you're going to execute on so that it shows up in your business or your life. If you'd like to talk with me about working together in my coaching program, like I work with Monish, then you can go to constructionleadingedge.com and schedule a free strategy call, and we can talk about that. If you own a construction business and you want to eliminate chaos, profit bleeds, get the results similar to what you heard about on this episode, then head over to constructionleadingedge.com, click the button that says schedule a call, and we will talk about what that might look like. Thank you so much for the ratings and the reviews. If you could take a moment, if you got value out of this podcast, to leave a rating and or a review on Apple Podcasts or whatever you're listening to this podcast on, that would be great. You can check out the show notes on your podcast player for some of the highlights and resources that were mentioned in this podcast episode. And as always, Thank you so much for listening. My name is Todd DeWalt from ConstructionLeadingEdge.com. I'll see you next time. Let me ask you a question. Are you tired of second guessing yourself on the big decisions you need to make as a business owner? Ever wish you could have somebody else to talk to who has experience owning a construction business and they're not a competitor, just to bounce ideas off? Do any of these 4 statements sound familiar? Number 1, I want to be constantly learning and improving, and if somebody else has figured out a better way, I'd like to know it. Number 2, I'd like to be part of something bigger than just myself, to be part of a group that's making a difference in the construction industry. Or number 3, I've been figuring things out on my own for a long time. Am I doing it right? Is there a better way? Or number 4, I don't know what I don't know, and I would sure like to avoid the expensive learning curve. And if you've dealt with some of these things, maybe you've tried a few solutions to try to solve these challenges, like reading business books and then trying to figure out how to apply it to your business. Or maybe joining a Facebook group or 2 and then wading through all the negativity and BS that's in there. Maybe you've joined a CEO group or a networking group, but they don't understand construction because they don't own construction businesses. And maybe you've even joined a local group of people doing the same type of work, but they're your competitors, and you're not really sure how transparent they're being or how transparent you should be. Imagine being able to make confident decisions about your business. I'm talking about new hires, new systems, new processes, when to fire bad clients, when and how to grow your business. Imagine having the security and support from a group of peers who are doing the same type of work, who are not in your backyard, they're not your competitors, where you could say, here's what I'm having challenges with, how would you work through this? Well, I'd like to tell you about the Builder Mastermind group, which is helping dozens of construction business owners solve those exact challenges. Here's how it works. When you join the Builder Mastermind group, you'll be placed in a small group of other construction business owners who are doing similar work with similar sized businesses, and they're not competing with you. Number 2, you'll have monthly calls with your small group where you'll discuss challenges and best practices around a specific topic. Number 3, you'll receive an execution plan to prepare for each month's call and to have a way to figure out your action items so that you can execute on them after the call. And then number 4, you'll also receive a summary of ideas and resources shared from all the small groups. In addition to that, you'll be part of a Slack channel where you can message people in your small group or people in other small groups as well. To get all of the details and see what our Builder Mastermind group members would tell you about their experience, go to buildermastermindgroup.com. That's buildermastermindgroup.com.